Good morning, agave lovers. Welcome back to the channel. My name is Lucas, and today is harvest day. We are going to be picking the Kalamata olives from this tree above me here. I have two Kalamata olive trees on the property. The other one behind me didn't really put out a whole lot of fruit this year. I did do a hard prune last year, so that was expected. I wasn't expecting a large production from that tree this year. This one is full and this one is ready to harvest. So we are going to do that today. But I say this because it brings up a good point that I want to talk about today. And I've touched on it before in the past. And that's agave placement and the proximity of one plant to another, or the proximity of the plants with respect to trees, or like I've talked about a lot in the past with my blue flames. And that is the proximity of these plants with respect to either the sidewalks or pathways. Today, specifically, it's these plants are a little close to each other, and it is also crowding this olive tree here. And when we decide to take some of our agaves and put them in our yards, in places that we can do that, of course, we have to really do a lot of research on these plants. Every agave is different. Their needs are different. Their exposure to the sun or to temperatures are all unique. And we need to look at each plant specifically. And with respect to agave placement, we have to really look at what the mature size of this plant is going to be. And our tape measure is our best friend when it comes to this. When we have a plant like this, ovatifolia, or whale's tongue agave, we have to consider that this plant is going to get about 4 to 6 feet wide and 3 to 4 feet tall. And we can't forget about the flower stalk, the bloom stalk. This will produce a beautiful, very large inflorescence. And I haven't had one bloom yet, but I've seen lots of video, lots of pictures of that around other social media campaigns. This is going to be a beautiful plant, and I want to make sure that it has the room to grow. I'm a little concerned because we're at about 3 feet right now, and it can really only get about 5 feet before it really starts to crowd this olive tree. It is planted on a small slope, and this is facing south, so this plant will track the sun somewhat, and there is a bit more room here for this plant to grow. So I may just leave it, see what happens. I do have some other blue glows here. These are variegated blue glows. This is a let me see here. That's a golden glow down there, and this is a snow glow. And this is Mediopicta, so it's variegated, centrally variegated. And this is just a typical blue glow back here. That's not quite full grown yet, so we do see there's not a lot of room between these two plants. And I knew I was gonna have a problem with that. I didn't want to get the blue glow close to their property, so I may have to make some adjustments here. I'm not quite sure yet. The Agave Montana back there is something that I have to keep the kids away from when we are harvesting this tree. And I'll show you some video of that as we do that later today. But I have talked a little bit, I think in the last video with Agave Midas, I talked about these Agave Montanas and how I've had to move them in the property a few times. Because I learned the hard way that Montanas don't like full sun, at least where I am, midsummer. They can really start to, the leaves will really start to die out and they have a hard time. So planting underneath trees was something that I really needed to do. But I have limited real estate. I have very few places for agaves, especially as these trees were quite small in the beginning, so they weren't really producing a lot of shade. But now they are getting larger, and I have Agave Montana under this Kalamata olive tree, the one behind me, and I do have another one planted under the city tree on the side of the house. Same as these ovatifolias, kind of the same as Montanas, where I do need some shade. You can see they really do get bleached when they're in full sun. So I have this one here. I have one right behind me, actually behind this euphorbia here. And that's getting some shade from that Kalamata olive tree. and I've got two more, one on the side of the house and on underneath the other city tree. So that said, I want to show you a few examples of agave placement, some problems and concerns that I've had over the years. And I'm going to show you just a little bit of video of us harvesting this tree a little bit later. But first, let's talk about agave placement and walk around the yard and see what we see. And if you recall from earlier videos, my agave blue flame, the large mature specimen that was growing out into the sidewalk right here, I did extract that and saved it, put it in my backyard, and made room for a golden barrel cactus to offset this one next to this other pathway here. And with respect to placement, it's really hard to place agaves anywhere near this monster, this agave Americana. I knew it was going to get big. I just didn't know how quickly it was going to get big. So with that said, I've had to make a lot of adjustments out here in the front with the agaves. And if you recall, this agave asperima was right here, and it was very much crowded by the Americana. So I did have to move it over here to give it a little bit more room. But when it comes to agave placement, this is always kind of, I come back to this one and the struggles that I have had and will continue to have with what I do with the plants that are around this agave. So stay tuned. We will be talking a lot about this Americana in days to come. Now, one of the larger projects that I had to do with respect to moving some of these plants around was this February. This large euphorbia, this variegated euphorbia mock, was originally here in the center of this island, right where that cactus is now. I was kind of tired of having to do all of the winter preparations on this plant that I was having to do, such as wrapping it in frost cloth, and then at the tips of every one of those branches I'd have to put like a plastic cup and then wrap it in winter cloth. And it's getting so large now that just doing that was such a difficult task. So I did move it onto the porch, and it's just going to be easier to deal with, get it out of the winter wind and rain up here. So that is something that was quite challenging because I had to rearrange a lot of these plants in order to accommodate that move. I had to take out this Tissot lion's mane just so that I could get up in here with the shovel and remove that big euphorbia. This cactus was, and my apologies, I'm not too great with cactus names, so this one was right where that large striated Americana is now. That was under the canopy of these Palo Verdes, and this cactus is going to get quite large, and I knew it was going to run into that canopy eventually, so before it got too big, I moved that and put it here. And while I was in here moving stuff around, I moved this horticulturist. It was down right between these two. This right here is one of my favorites. This is from Hidden Agave. This is a hybrid of a Oterii or Titanota and mixed with horticulturist. And horticulturist is one of my favorites too. So this was right in between this Titanota black and blue and this hybrid. And I wanted to separate them a bit, so I moved that up to give it some more space. And these are starting to crowd up here, but they were even worse. This Titanota white ice was crowding between the macroacantha and the parasana. So I moved it and tilted it down a little bit to fill up this space here to give it some more room. And it'll eventually crowd out with these Perii truncata and all of its pups here. So I will eventually, maybe even this winter, make some changes. I might even take out that white ice to open up some space there. And while I was working in here, when I took out that lion's mane, I also had to take out this black and blue just to make room up here to shovel and get that euphorbia out. And they're both really healthy now. That was in February, and they survived this summer without much impact. So that is always great when you can make big changes and not really hurt these plants too much. This striated Americana was down farther. It was being crowded with that Titanota white ice and the Samliana, the variegated Samliana. It's not a Butterfingers. It is a Crassuspina, and that has doubled in size since actually probably tripled in size since I planted it. And I knew it was going to get bigger. It's not going to get huge, but this striated Americana is. So I brought it up here probably I moved it back about, I would say 4 feet, and it's in a nice space now. This is where the cactus that I just showed you was. And there's plenty of room up here for that Americana to grow and stretch its legs. So I've got another one right next to it, and this one is now a little too big to sell on my page with shipping and all. So I'm gonna have to find a room for that. But look at these pups. Aren't these pups beautiful? There are so many. I love taking care of these striated Americanas, and tons of pups. So they are fun to put in pots. And I do have plenty of those, but they do sell out fast when they're on my page. Okay, let's go check out a couple more. Now here is a faux or a false saguaro cactus. And this is going to get huge too. This is planted next to this manzanita here. And the manzanita was pretty much dead. It wasn't doing so well. So let me come around the side here. I planted a strawberry tree right behind it. And the strawberry tree was super unhealthy. And then the manzanita came back. And I mean, it was like a dead stump for a half a season. And it started to leaf and has done really well since. And then in that time, the strawberry tree has come back too. So I'm going to have a little bit of problems here, I'm sure, with some space, especially with this false saguaro cactus here. The cactus I can move. That's no problem at all. And that thing grows plenty fast. And I don't need a huge root ball with that, but that one will be easy. Well, not easy, not terribly difficult to move. And we'll have to find some space for that as well. And I know I keep coming back to this Americana, but this is sort of the pain in my butt. It is the thing that has continued and will continue to present a lot of spacing issues here. And I bought the koa to harvest this agave this year, but I just couldn't bring myself to it. It's the first agave I ever planted in the yard, and I had tons of plans on what to do up here, and I've got lots of rare agaves in the greenhouse and everything selected to replace it with, but I can't bring myself to it yet. I'm gonna give it one more year to see if it flowers. I know that's extremely wishful thinking. They don't call them century plants for nothing, so we'll see. We'll see what happens with that. And finally, we have our yucca rostrata. A lot of thought went into this, and I had to do a lot of research to figure out how large this plant was going to be, because it was going to go into kind of an important place in the landscaping. This is one of the first things that you see when you approach the pathway leading up to our house. And as you can see, we're not dealing with a whole lot of room for error here. I do have it a little bit closer to the driveway than I do the pathway here. I'm not too concerned with this bumping up against my truck when I'm coming and going from my driveway, but I did want to leave as much space as possible here in the walkway for our guests. And not a lot of room here. I'm really hoping that it's not going to get much wider than this. I really hope it doesn't. But so far, so good. This thing has grown way faster than I expected. When I bought these, I bought them, I think probably maybe 6 years ago, and I got them really small. I was told I should get them large because they're such slow growers, and they're right. When they are in containers, they don't really grow that fast. But man, when I put this here it has really exploded in size. As you can see, it does have a pretty large trunk on it already. It's being sort of camouflaged by the lower leaves down here, but it's crowding these truncata. But I knew that going into this, that this was eventually going to be on a stalk, and it's going to be kind of up here in this area, while these truncatas will have a little bit more room once this plant does grow a little taller. And now I want to show you a little bit of our harvesting process. I know that's not agave related, but I want to tie it into the agave placement, because I think it is important where we have things like trees and sidewalks and making room for those plants. And especially that Kalamata olive tree. I want to make sure that I have enough room for myself and my kids and my wife, that we have enough room underneath to work to harvest those olives. And at the moment, it looks like we do have enough space, but we could quickly run out, especially when that ovatifolia starts to put on a lot more size. So time will tell. But for now, we're not going to do many drastic changes in the garden this winter. And that is typically when I make a lot of my changes. As soon as October hits, not this year, because we just had an unseasonably warm October, but as we approach November 1st, a week from today, we will, I'll start to kind of move things around, the things that I have to do. But for the most part, I'll probably be bringing some of the more rare stuff out of the greenhouses and putting them in the yard. And without further ado, I want to show you some of the video of us harvesting. And I want to take just a moment to thank you for tuning in. I really do appreciate that. And if you haven't already, I would appreciate a like and subscribe. And the channel is growing, and I hope to be putting these videos out maybe 1 or 2 a week. So thanks again for tuning in, and I really look forward to showing you more. Thanks.